Guests with us this morning, so I think we're going to begin by welcoming them. Isn't it amazing to come into this space with the work of the hands, with brothers and sisters around the world that we will never meet, but with whom we are in communion? It kind of feels like the vision is unfolded right before our eyes. And we are grateful for this to Derek Cunningham, who after 10,000 Villages Canada came to the end of their road early 2020, and those of us who hosted stores then folded up by the end of March of 2020. Derek Cunningham, who is the manager of the store in Cobourg, determined that he and his board could work together to partner with the American 10,000 Villages Company. And I can't even imagine the paperwork or the bureaucracy or now the tariff conversations involved in that, which just makes, every time I communicate with Derek, I have to say, you are a rock star. So thank you, Derek, for keeping that vision going in Cobourg. Thank you for partnering with us for this festival sale every year. And thank you for your daily just work of one foot of the other in resilience and support of this wondrous vision for the human community. We also have two students from McGill with us today, and I knew their names about 12 hours ago, but I'm going to ask them to just stand up and introduce themselves and speak to what they're studying, because they are studying alternative, more fair economic systems, I think, in order to pursue a world that supports more fair economic systems. So please stand and speak with your outside voice, who you are and where you come from.
And we're both currently undergraduate students at McGill University. We have very similar degrees. I'm a sustainable business student with a specialization in international development.
And I'm an international development major, so more of the diplomacy route with a study in management as well.
And we both are research assistants under a professor in sustainable business who does lots of work focusing on the resilience and impact of social enterprises. And a lot of this research focuses and looks at 10,000 Villages Canada and their history. It's being studied regarding other members of the team for over 10 years. And we're so happy to be a part of this team. I've been involved for over a year now. I'm still new to it, but it's great to be able to learn about fair trade, how to give back, the importance of community, and then to be able to come visit Picton, see so many of you, see all the products being displayed and sold. We don't have that in Montreal. So it's been really a lovely time.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your work. All right. I invited Tom to play a version of Let There Be Peace on Earth for Focus today. Not as a means of that, and the reason I've done that is because I think we recognize that what the world wants and needs more than anything else is peace, but there will be no peace without justice. And that is the deepest challenge of the human community at this point. And yet it speaks to, again, that ancient longing for a time when we can coexist together on this planet, and that we can coexist at the same table with enough for all.
It kind of seeped into the arrangement while it was just without even thinking about it. So anyway, here we are. I just wanted to say something, but she said, yeah, very slow. She said, let peace and melodic. So.
Let us pray. We gather as a circle of friends this morning who seek to live out of this ancient vision of peace and justice for all. We gather as those who are alarmed by those things we see unfolding on the planet. We gather as those who have been paralyzed with anxiety and fear and even rage. And so we gather again together in this sacred space to take this moment to reconnect with one another, to reconnect with those from every corner of the planet who share our common humanity and share our deepest yearnings for a life abundant. We gather again to be strengthened, empowered, encouraged by the possibilities of transformation. And we gather as well to have our soul revived in its deepest places, watered like a plant that is wilting so that we too can claim with hope and joy this life abundant, this life together, this life as communion with one another and this earth that we call home. May it be so. Amen. The hymn is on the screen. Today marks the end of the cycle of the Christian year, a year that we begin again next Sunday as we light the first candle of Advent. Since almost 1918, I think, a number of bishops in Europe declared that they wanted to appoint the last Sunday of the Christian year, that's where we are now, Christ the King Sunday. And the reason they did that is because they had just come out of the Great War, and it was their way of making a theological declaration that despite all of the kings and empires that were claiming leadership and power and control on the planet, the role of the church was to declare that we had another king, and that was Christ. But that was problematic. And because the church itself, for centuries, also took its place beside the kingdoms of this world, and also claimed power, exercised power, and abused power, all in the name of Christ the King. And I was thinking about that this week. I was thinking about how Jesus took all of our understandings of power and control and turned them on their head. And the two passages I will share with you this morning speak to that way that we are in many ways invited to step outside those realms and ecosystems of power, because what we know, and I think what we are seeing more clearly than we have ever seen before, though it has always been the case, is that as soon as you begin to claim and exercise power, something gets inside and twists it, and so that it always becomes power over as opposed to empowering. So the first passage is just one verse from the prophet Micah. God has told us what is right and what is required. See that justice is done. Let mercy be your first concern, and walk humbly with the Holy One. And then from Matthew 25, words given to Jesus. When the Son of Man comes in glory, all nations will gather, and he will separate people like a shepherd separates sheep from goats. To those on his right, he will say, "Come, you who are blessed, receive the kingdom prepared for you. I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you offered me a drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I needed clothes, and you dressed me. I was sick, and you cared for me. I was in prison, and you visited me." And then the people will ask, "When did we see you hungry or thirsty, or welcome you or care for you?" And the king will answer, "Whenever you did these things for the least important members of my family, you did them for me." And then he will turn to those on his left. "You turned away when I was hungry, thirsty, a stranger, without clothes, sick, or in prison. You offered nothing." And they will ask, "When did we fail to help you?" And he will reply, "When you failed to help the least of these, you failed to help me." There's that little phrase in Matthew 25. It's a moment, really, so simple and so disruptive that it rearranges, and it is intended to rearrange how we see the world. Whatever you do to the least of these, you do to me. It is a radical reframing of reality. In a world when everybody wants their savior to come from outside, from above, with power. Suddenly, it's turning that story on its head. And it suggests that every encounter, every decision, every habit, every system we participate in is an opportunity to make an encounter with the sacred and to have a sacred encounter. Every person becomes a kind of threshold where the sacred stands, waiting. And alongside these words of Jesus, an equally simple phrase from Micah, who lived in a world full of inequality, corruption, and fear. He looked around and saw systems that kept people trapped, land stolen from families, leaders who exploited the poor, a culture that had no kindness. And in the middle of all of this, he offers that astonishingly simple line: do justice, love kindness, walk humbly with your God. So when we put these two phrases together, we get a vision that stretches beyond any single program or charity or movement. It asks us to consider something much larger. How do we shape a life that recognizes every human being as a bearer of sacred worth? How do we participate in an economy that honors dignity, not just profit? How do we walk through this world acknowledging the sacred within ourselves, within the other? The vision of fair trade is one meaningful and powerful response. It's not the whole vision, but it's a doorway into it. When we choose fair trade, we're choosing relationships grounded in justice rather than exploitation. We're saying, your life matters as much as mine. Your labor has value, and your well-being is woven into my well-being. It's a very concrete way of making justice visible. But these passages ask us to, again, think broadly about the world in which we live and our day-to-day patterns and how we can see this invitation on a daily basis. How do we treat every encounter as sacred? How do we slow down enough to have a really good look at the person in front of us, not just the role they play in our lives? Even those, particularly those with whom we disagree, by whom we have been hurt. How do we let compassion shape how we respond, even if it goes against our own grain? These passages invite us, too, to consider how we organize our economies. We begin to ask questions that go beyond, but how much does it cost? And move toward, who pays the real price? Whose labor makes my comfort possible? What would a more just decision look like here? When Jesus says, you saw me hungry, you saw me thirsty, you saw me a stranger, he's inviting us into a new kind of economic imagination. One where people matter more than systems, and systems are built to serve people rather than the other way around. And finally, these passages ask us to consider how we manage our resources, recognizing that we are not owners, but stewards. Everything in our hands, our skills, our energy, our property, is part of a sacred trust. And so the invitation is to ask, how might my resources, my energy, my agency participate in healing, in justice, and kindness. The vision behind these two very simple phrases invites us to a new way of seeing, a way of remembering, recognizing that the mystery whom we have called God meets us in real people, daily choices, and small acts that weave the world together. As our planet faces undue challenges due to power struggles on the one hand and climate change on the other, we are going to see more and more victims of those struggles. Victims whose homes and livelihoods are being destroyed, either by war or the changing climate. And that means that more and more people from around the world are going to be seeking sanctuary, safety, refuge amongst us. We are already in the middle of these conversations about who gets safety, who we let in, who belongs and who doesn't. It has, in fact, become one of the central conversations driving politics in the Western world, resulting in the rise of some fairly right-wing governments. I'm not suggesting there are easy answers. There are not. But follow the money, follow the greed, follow the sale of arms, and you will discover the systems that are responsible for the growing numbers of those who suffer and who are being displaced. And this is true of our own systems in Canada. Speak to those who work among the poor, the homeless, the addicts, like Anita did for 30 years in Toronto, and she would declare that these systems are not made to serve the least of these. It's so discouraging. But there it is. Next week, the cycle of the Christian year begins again with the season of Advent. And every season of the Christian year places Jesus somewhere. So in Advent, we have him in the womb of this young maiden. At Christmas, he's in a manger. Moving through Epiphany, he is teaching on the shores of Galilee. And then when we arrive in Lent, he's colliding with the religious authorities. And finally, his life ends in a cruel execution by the state. But in one affirmation, Jesus suggests, these are all stories about me. These are all seasons of my life, and they all have something to teach. But if you really want an encounter with me, take seriously every encounter you have with each other, particularly your encounters with the sick, the poor, the homeless, the refugee. This is not a liberal agenda. This is what is at the heart of the mystery of the incarnation. That the sacred among us does not arrive as a king in power and might, not on a throne, not to be feared, but in that deep presence, that deep reality, that deep energy that holds everything together. And the name of that sacred reality is love. I'd like to invite Derek to the front now to speak about what he's up to, and he always has great news stories. And I have I think Tom.
test. Oh, I'm on. Good. Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for having 10,000 Villages back to the Andrew. It's been about a year since you rebranded, correct? As the Andrew? I think it's been about a year. Okay, so it's coming up on a year. I also suggest, humbly, that you might also want to add to your rebranding as the Church of the Holy Olive Oil. Yes. Because I have brought every bottle I can today, because you keep asking to bring olive oil. So you and Catherine are going to have to sort out who gets the olive oil, okay, in a fair distribution, because that's all I have. So, yeah, well, I was actually going to do that as a segue to something you said a little bit earlier about tariffs, because the first question I got when I got here on Friday was, how's tariffs affecting you? And the answer is, I'm not sure yet, because all the product for Christmas usually gets purchased in July and August, and the suppliers were stocked up with product they had already bought pre-tariff. So really, I bought as much as I could before tariffs kind of entered into the fray, a lot of the fair trade suppliers are US based. So when they bring things in from India now, there is a punitive 50% tariff that is unjustified, but it's there. So how will that translate in January when I buy all the replacement for everything that's sold at Christmas in the big market in January? I don't know. I don't know what that's going to look like, because I assume the prices are going to be higher, but I don't know. So I'm just going with that assumption, and we'll have to figure it out. Let's get through Christmas, and then in quiet of January, we'll sort out what's happening next. But we're trying to use as many Canadian suppliers as we can, because there's no tariffs to worry about when they bring in from a developing country to Canada. So we're looking at that, and we have some connections to some Canadian importers of fair trade products as well. So that's helping. But back to the olive oil. Zaytoun olive oil, if you saw it before it disappeared from the tables over there, there was a sign with it. It is the first tariff-influenced product that I know of in our store, because the shipment that came in this fall from the West Bank was, even though Zaytoun is a Canadian gentleman in Toronto of Palestinian descent, he, after 20 years of Zaytoun, 2 years ago decided he just couldn't lift the heavy bottles out of anymore. So he partnered with a fair trade supplier called Al Ard, and it does fair trade olive oil from the Holy Land, but they're based in the States. So the shipments now come into the States, and then they send it up to Mississauga, to a place where I can go and pick it up. So now they're trying to figure out for next year, for the next shipment, bringing it directly to Canada to that establishment. So they thought they had it all figured out, and then the tariffs hit. So that's why the olive oil is now, I'm very transparent. It was $30 a month ago, now it's $33, because there's a 10% tariff on it. And that olive oil is very important because, as you know, in the West Bank, there's a lot of tensions. Sometimes farmers can't get to their fields because settler communities are becoming very aggressive. I'm surprised that we can even get olive oil from the West Bank. And this afternoon, now that I brought you all my olive oil, I'm going to be sending an email saying, can I get another round? Can I go to Mississauga and pick up another supply? And I don't know, every time I ask for a new round, if it's going to be there or if the shipment has run out, because it's one container a year after the harvest. And I don't know if another shipment will be able to get out. You just don't know. I was surprised that we finally got olive oil back 2 Aprils ago after well, it's been 2 years since the October 7th attack. So I didn't know if we'd get any that year, and somehow they managed to get it out. So we hope and we pray that those farmers can still be sustained, that the Tree of Life program, $1 from every bottle, goes back to plant new olive trees, if that can continue to happen. So it's a lifeline. Olive oil is like the blood of the Palestinian people in the Holy Land. So we hope that we can continue to do that and get that out. I have 2 stories for you today. One is a story of unfairness met with resilience and hope, and the other is a story of community. So the story of fairness and hope. It centers around a placemat, which are over there on the table for sale. But you might not know what the story behind the placemat is. This story happened this year. We have, as well as reaching out to Canadian suppliers, we've started for the first time since independence to actually connect with some of the larger artisan groups to get some product directly. And that's huge. One of them is CRC in India. They are a very large artisan group, artisan co-op that works with many different artisan groups in and around Kolkata that can do many different materials, leather, silver jewelry, cloth, weaving. So they have artisans that do many skilled crafts. So it's great because then we can get different types of products in and not all the same thing, like felt. Like Nepal is mostly felt. You want felt ornaments, you can get a zillion felt ornaments. You can be overrun with felt. But so to have a diversity of products is really important, obviously. So we work directly with Indro, and Indro is the director of CRC. His mother started the group several decades ago, and he carries on that tradition. And he was actually the last guest artisan at 10,000 Villages National Managers Meeting in 2019. He was the guest that was brought over to they always brought a guest for the managers to meet, to have artisan stories directly. So he was actually in Coburg a year ago. He actually teaches in the US for the fall term, and he was visiting friends in Toronto, and he came to Coburg. He gave a public presentation for us. It was great. So we have this connection with Indro. And Indro sent an email in the summer. He had been to a global, a big housewares global craft fair that's not fair trade, but some fair trade artisan partners attend it because they're big enough and they can go and see clients. I always say that in the post 10,000 Villages Canada world, if there is a silver lining about them having to close, is that for 42 years in Canada and a little bit longer in the States, they helped artisan work with the fair trade principles, and one of those principles is to build capacity. So you have a kiln, can we help you make another kiln so you can get more orders and have more work? And increasing capacity over time, groups like CRC and some others that have grown very large and employ many, many people. The silver lining is the mission worked, even though 10,000 Villages can't be here to continue it. Those artisan groups have learned and grown and are self-sufficient. They have glossy magazines of products that they can send to anyone, not just fair trade suppliers or retailers. They attend international conferences and international trade shows to get more work, to get more orders. And it doesn't matter if it's to fair trade people or some big box store somewhere that just wants these lovely products in their store. Whether they say it's fair trade or not, it is fair trade. So that's important, that they have built capacity. So Indro was at this, he always goes every year to this show in Frankfurt, Germany called Ambiente. And at Ambiente, he takes orders from fair trade retailers, some not fair trade retailers. And in one case, he had a new client, a large German retailer came and ordered 3 products in big quantities. And so that was in March. By July, the orders were completed. They contacted the big German retailer, and they said, actually, we don't want the placemats. They had ordered 800 placemats. They were sitting right there, all ready for summer vibe and fall colors, all ready to go. Now we don't want those. That's the story of conventional trade. No respect for the producers. In fair trade, you order those, unless something catastrophic happens, you buy them. You've committed into that process and that partnership, that relationship, as Lynn said. Okay. So Indro gets on email and tells us the story. He sends it to a lot of different partners, probably. And so in Coburg, I send out a weekly email, and I send out that these have been abandoned. I use it as a story of fair trade versus conventional trade. This is what happened. These are all sitting here. Artisans have been paid, but they're sitting there not sold now because they've been abandoned. So our newsletter customers wrote back and started placing orders because they loved the look of them and they thought, I can use those. At McGill University, Juliet and Daria's senior researcher, Professor Anna Kim, she was taken by this story. She's worked in fair trade all over the world before doing the sustainable business research. And she reached out to her colleagues on faculty and got some orders. And she wanted some as gifts, probably because she can say, this is what fair trade means, and this is how it versus conventional trade. It's a living testament to the whole process, this story. So she did, and she ordered 50. And then the church that we work with in Montreal, that we supply Christ Church Cathedral with their monthly kiosk with chocolate and that, they stood up, our contact there stood up and asked the congregation, they ended up ordered 50. So all together, along with some for the store shelves in Cobourg, we ordered 225 of those 800 placemats over 1 quarter just coming here to Cobourg, to this area, to help artisan groups because of the relationship. We can help. We can do that. And we have done it. And that's what we continue to try to do. The story of community, quickly, revolves around, well, it actually started a year ago when my assistant manager was looking for about 3 months through the summer to try to find a place to take fair trade back to Toronto. 10,000 Villages had 4 stores there at the height of their fair trade life. And he found a place, a market that ran for 3 weeks in a huge old United Church on the block right beside where the Danforth store used to be located. Okay? And it seemed like an established market, so he loaded up the car with product like this, went up there. It wasn't as advertised, and it was a very disappointing $660 for an entire afternoon. It didn't even pay his salary for all the effort to get there, to do the sale and get it set up. By comparison, I forgot to say, you just topped in the last 2 days $6,000 in sales, as opposed to Toronto with $660. Yes, congratulations. So we recognize there is always a problem of trying to get 2 million people to come to one place at a particular time, but we thought we could get a few of them, but obviously not. It didn't work. So I said to my manager, who was a little dejected after the whole experience, I said, how about this? Go to where the community already exists. Because I took product back to New Hamburg for the Emmanuel Mennonite Relief Sale 4 years ago, and there were virtually people almost in tears wondering if the store had reopened. They were so excited to see the product. So I thought about it and I said, you used to be a volunteer at the Ottawa store. Why don't you go back and contact the Ottawa store and see if they want to do a sale event? Now, in Ottawa, 10,000 Villages Canada used to run a sale at the Ottawa Mennonite Church every weekend in November, 4 weekends. And it used to garner $80,000 to $100,000 worth of sales for 10,000 Villages Canada. When 10,000 Villages Canada got out of that doing remote sales by sending things all over the country to remote locations, they did that in 2018. The Ottawa store quickly picked up that sale and did the 4 weeks. It was a huge boon to their bottom line, of course. How could it not be? But then 2019 was the last time that 4-week sale happened. And we did get asked, are you interested in Canadian? No, we cannot do 4 weeks in November in a city 3 hours away. We cannot do that. It's to support that in Cobourg. We have other sales we do, like this one now. But I said to Bob, my assistant manager, why don't you see if they want to revive it for 1 weekend? It's been 6 years. And they were very keen to do that. So earlier in November, we took everything like this and more, a lot of product up there. And in Friday night and Saturday through the day, in 11 hours, they did $34,000 worth of sales. The appetite was very much there. And I should have sent this picture to Lynn. She asked me on Friday, but I never got around to it. I only thought about it too late. But when we walked into Ottawa to set up and look at this new space and how we would set it up, there was a quilt on the back wall. And the quilt is their 50th anniversary quilt. I know you can't see it, but the 50th anniversary quilt for their congregation. And in the center is a tree of life, and below that at the roots is scripture, and there's people singing in the choir, so all these elements of their congregation. But if I zoom into the top left corner of the quilt, which was the first thing that caught my eye, I'm just going to walk around and show it to you, and some of you might recognize what was embedded into the top left corner of their quilt for their 50th anniversary celebrations. Don't give it away until everyone has a chance to see it. A lot of you will recognize it knowing your connection with the store here. What is embedded in the top left corner of their quilt? The 10,000 Villages logo. Their congregation saw as part of their identity their participation in fair trade. So much so that in their 50th anniversary banner quilt, they put it there for everyone to see and to remind them. So you can understand why the passion came back. There were volunteers coming out the yin-yang to help out. They were so excited. And I wasn't there because I just went to help set up, but I let it be my assistant manager and his former store family running it all. I just kept getting reports back like it was the same as in New Hamburg a few years ago. Everyone's so happy to see each other, asking, can we do this for like more than 1 week? And no, we can't. But we just keep that feeling of community coming back together to do good, just like you do here every year with this sale. All the store volunteers coming back together with Catherine and Lynn and the board and doing this here out of the Andrew. That spirit of community and passion for doing something good, for walking justly with God on behalf of nameless artisans around the world, as Lynn said, that you will never meet, but knowing that they have the dignity of a fair wage because of what we do. So thank you very much from the board of the Coburg store and from me for having us back, for selling $6,000 plus a whole bunch of olive oil still to come after the service. We don't know where it's going to end, but thank you so much for having us.
Piece from the hymn book we don't sing very often, but again, it came to mind when I was thinking about the phrase, to the least of these. And we have 2 or 3 people who know it a little bit better than they did at 9 o'clock this morning. And I'm going to invite you to remain seated, because sometimes, then you can just focus on getting the words into the tune. And it comes to us out of our brothers and sisters in Latin America. And Tom's going to play the whole thing through. Oh, you know what? Yeah, let's do that. share how we, as a circle of friends at the Andrew, continue to make decisions to live out of this ancient, challenging vision. The story I'm going to share with you today has to do with how the Andrew functions, how this functions as a resource, a trust that we have been given from the generations before us to continue to serve the least of us in the community. So some of you know that before COVID, Alternatives for Women used to partner with the drama department at the high school and used to host the annual December 6th memorial for the Montreal Massacre here in our sanctuary. COVID happened, all kinds of things fell apart. And I learned a year ago that they were having their little memorial event in Benson Park in -10, and that there weren't a lot of people showing up. So we decided this year to pick up the phone in October, reach out to Alternatives for Women and say, come on back. The space is yours for free. We are happy to offer it to you. We are happy to participate in this memorial and support you as you support women. So it's a way that the Andrew isn't just a property. It isn't just a building. It is a means by which we provide space to the community for community endeavors that support the least among us. So I'm going to start some announcements now.